The early morning light filtered through the abandoned warehouse windows, illuminating William's canvas, a vast, neglected wall in Brooklyn's industrial district. His hoodie pulled low over his face, the 23-year-old moved with practiced precision, his spray cans leaving vibrant trails of color that seemed to breathe life into the decaying concrete. This particular piece was different, more personal. Within the intricate design of urban silhouettes and bold typography, he had hidden symbols of his childhood struggle, a visual poem about finding one's voice in a world that rarely pauses to listen. William stepped back, his breath visible in the crisp autumn air. The mural was nearly complete, but dawn was approaching, and with it the risk of being spotted. He wasn't afraid of getting caught for vandalism. His work had long crossed the line from illegal tagging to respected street art, with several neighborhood businesses now commissioning his distinctive style. What terrified him was the possibility of being forced to speak, to explain himself, to stumble over words that refused to flow smoothly from his lips. "Stupid," he muttered to himself, frustrated by the stutter that emerged even when he was alone. The severe stammer had been his shadow since the 3rd grade, when the family secret had exploded into public view. His father's arrest for embezzlement had transformed William overnight from a carefree child to the convict son who can't even talk right. The trauma had locked his words inside, and 15 years later they were still struggling to break free. Back in his small apartment in Bushwick, William removed his paint-stained hoodie and stood under the shower, letting hot water wash away the night's work. His roommate Marcus was already in the kitchen brewing coffee when William emerged. "Another masterpiece complete?" Marcus asked, sliding a mug across the counter. William nodded, grateful for the friend who never pushed him to speak more than necessary. Marcus had been his buffer to the world since college, handling phone calls and social interactions that William avoided. "You know," Marcus continued, scrolling through his phone, "you're getting quite the following online. Some of the photos I posted of your work last month got over 10,000 likes." William shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention, even if it was anonymous. His street name, Echo, protected his identity, allowing his art to speak the words he couldn't. Still, a part of him longed for recognition, not for fame, but for understanding. He wanted people to see beyond the hoodie, beyond the silence, to the person underneath who had something to say. Across town, in the bustling offices of the Metro Voice, an independent news website, Eliza Chen stared at her laptop screen, frustrated. At 25, she was already tired of churning out clickbait articles and celebrity gossip. She had joined journalism to tell authentic stories, to give voice to the voiceless, not to write about reality stars' breakfast choices. "Eliza, did you finish that piece on influencer fashion trends?" Her editor's voice carried across the open office. "Just uploading it now," she replied, hiding her distaste. "But David, I've been thinking about a new series. Something about local artists transforming the city landscape, telling stories through public spaces." David raised an eyebrow. "Got anyone specific in mind?" "There's this street artist, Echo. Their work is everywhere in Brooklyn now, and there's something different about it. It's not just aesthetics, it's communication. I think there's a real story there. Find the person behind the tag, get me an exclusive angle, and I'll consider it," David said, already walking away. "Until then, I need that piece on why Gen Z is obsessed with 90s fashion by tomorrow." Eliza sighed, but felt a spark of determination. She saved several images of Echo's work to her phone and decided to spend her weekend hunting for new pieces, hoping to catch the elusive artist in action or find someone who knew their identity. That evening, William sat on the fire escape outside his bedroom window, sketchbook in hand, planning his next piece. The city sprawled before him, a maze of lights and shadows. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Dude, check this out." The link led to an advertisement for a new sneaker brand. William's heart dropped as he recognized the background. It was his mural, the one with hidden symbols of his personal struggle, now serving as a backdrop for models posing with overpriced shoes. The caption read, "Urban Edge meets Premium Comfort, Street Style." His hands trembled as he zoomed in. They had digitally altered parts of his work, removing some elements and enhancing others to better fit their brand colors. The symbols of his childhood trauma, his stutter, his father's imprisonment, all had been commodified into a trendy aesthetic without his knowledge or consent. William felt sick. The one place where he expressed himself freely had been violated, stripped of meaning and repurposed to sell products. His private pain was now a marketing tool, and no one would ever know or care about the truth behind the imagery. He typed furiously to Marcus, "They stole it. They took my voice again." Marcus replied immediately, "We should do something about this. You have rights, man." But what could he do? William had no legal claim to walls he painted without permission. His anonymity, once a shield, now felt like a prison. To fight for his art, he would need to step out of the shadows, to speak up, the very thing he had spent his life avoiding. As he wrestled with this dilemma, Eliza was walking through that same Brooklyn neighborhood, camera in hand, documenting Echo's work for her potential story. She paused before the now famous mural, struck by the raw emotion evident in every line and color. Taking photos from multiple angles, she noticed details that didn't appear in the social media posts, hidden words and symbols that told a deeper story than first apparent. "Beautiful, isn't it?" An older man had stopped beside her. "It's incredible," Eliza agreed. "Do you know anything about the artist?" "Not much. Comes at night, always alone, always with that hoodie pulled down low. Never speaks to anyone." The man shrugged. "But the art speaks plenty loud, don't you think?" Eliza nodded, focusing her camera on a particularly intricate section of the mural. "Yes," she murmured. "I just wonder what exactly it's trying to say." Chapter 2. The advertisement featuring William's stolen artwork went viral within days. The sneaker company, Urban Stride, saw their social media engagement skyrocket as the distinctive mural backdrop caught attention across platforms. William watched in helpless anger as his most personal creation became the hottest marketing aesthetic in the city, with influencers now flocking to the original location for photo shoots. "You need to lawyer up," Marcus insisted over dinner. "At least consult someone about your options." William shook his head. No point," he managed. How could he explain to a lawyer the magnitude of what had been taken from him? It wasn't just intellectual property, it was his substitute voice, his emotional outlet. "Then at least sign this." Marcus slid a paper across the table. It was a registration form for an upcoming street art symposium at the Brooklyn Cultural Center. They're looking for presentations on the commercialization and appropriation of street art. It's perfect timing. William stared at the form as if it were written in an alien language. Public speaking was his ultimate nightmare. "You don't have to speak," Marcus added quickly, reading his friend's expression. "You could do a demonstration, or I could read something you write. But man, you've got to start standing up for yourself." That night, unable to sleep, William pulled out his laptop and began typing what he couldn't say aloud. His journey from a traumatized child to a silent artist, how each piece contained fragments of his story, and how seeing his work stripped of context felt like being silenced all over again. The words flowed in written form, uninhibited by the stutter that plagued his speech. By dawn, he had produced a powerful essay about art as voice and identity. Meanwhile, Eliza's investigation into Echo was gaining momentum. She had mapped the locations of all known works, interviewed local residents, and compiled a timeline of the artist's evolution. Her editor had finally approved a feature piece, impressed by the angle she'd developed, urban art as communication for those marginalized by conventional platforms. On a hunch, Eliza visited the site of the mural, now featured in the Urban Stride campaign. The wall was crowded with people taking selfies, the original meaning of the artwork lost beneath filters and hashtags. She approached a group of teenagers. "Do you know what this piece was actually about before the ad?" They shrugged, uninterested in anything beyond the mural's newfound fame. Frustrated, Eliza wandered to a nearby coffee shop to organize her notes. The barista, noticing her camera, struck up a conversation. "Researching Echo?" he asked, nodding toward her photos. "Yes, for an article. Do you know anything?" The barista glanced around and lowered his voice. "Not much, but my cousin works at that art supply store on Bedford. Says a guy always comes in buying specific colors, the same ones Echo uses, always wearing a hoodie, barely speaks." Eliza felt a surge of excitement. "When does he usually come in?" "Afternoons, mostly, especially Thursdays before they get new stock." It was Wednesday. Eliza thanked him, left a generous tip, and made plans to stake out the art supply store the following day. William had no idea he was being tracked as he submitted his essay to the symposium committee, anonymously through Marcus, and then fell into an exhausted sleep. He dreamed of standing before a crowd, mouth open but no sound emerging, while behind him his art disappeared piece by piece, replaced by corporate logos. He woke to his phone buzzing with notifications. The Urban Stride campaign had expanded, with the company now announcing a street art collection directly inspired by anonymous urban artists. Their website featured digitally altered versions of not just his mural, but 2 other pieces he had created in different neighborhoods. Something inside William snapped. This wasn't just theft anymore, it was erasure. Without conscious decision, he found himself packing his spray cans into his backpack, pulling on his signature black hoodie, and heading out into the daylight. Unusual for him, as he typically worked at night. He made his way to the art supply store on Bedford Avenue, desperate to restock his specific shade of blue for what he was planning. As he browsed the shelves, keeping his head down and hoodie up as always, he was unaware of Eliza Chen entering the store, her camera discreetly ready. Eliza spotted him immediately. The posture, the hoodie, the careful selection of spray paint colors that matched Echo's palette. Her journalistic instincts fired, but something made her hesitate. This wasn't just a scoop. This was someone's life. Someone who clearly valued their privacy. Instead of approaching directly, she pretended to shop, observing from a distance. William paid for his supplies and left quickly, uncomfortable with the daytime exposure. He headed straight for a wall in Williamsburg, one highly visible from the L train as it emerged above ground. It was risky to work in broad daylight, but the urgency he felt overrode his caution. Eliza followed at a safe distance, her heart racing with the thrill of discovery. She watched as William set up before a blank wall, unpacked his cans, and began to work with astonishing speed and precision. Even from her position across the street, she could see this piece was different, angrier, more direct. No cryptic symbols or hidden meanings this time. Instead, William was creating a powerful visual commentary on corporate appropriation, featuring a stylized version of the Urban Stride logo being torn apart to reveal authentic street art beneath. For 2 hours, Eliza documented the process, capturing the artist's fluid movements and growing composition. When William finally stepped back to assess his work, she could see it was a masterpiece of protest art, beautiful, scathing, and unmistakable in its message. What happened next would change everything. As William was packing up his supplies, a Urban Stride promotional team turned the corner, scouting locations for their next photo shoot. They stopped, stunned by the fresh mural that so directly attacked their brand. The team leader immediately started filming with his phone, while another called someone on their corporate team. William froze, caught between flight and confrontation. The hoodie suddenly seemed an insufficient shield against the very real threat of legal repercussions. As the corporate team approached him, demanding to know who had authorized this defacement, Eliza made a split-second decision. She stepped forward, camera raised, press credentials visible. "I'm Eliza Chen, from the Metro Voice, documenting urban art responses to corporate appropriation. May I have your names for my article?" The diversion worked. The Urban Stride team, suddenly concerned about negative press, backed off slightly, turning their attention to Eliza and her questions about the company's policy on utilizing street art in their campaigns. In the momentary confusion, William slipped away, but not before locking eyes with Eliza. In that brief exchange, there was recognition, not of faces, but of intention. She had protected him. He had seen her camera, understood she knew his identity, yet she had chosen to shield rather than expose him. Back in his apartment, William paced anxiously. His impulsive action could have devastating consequences. If Urban Stride pursued legal action, his anonymity would be shattered. Worse, his protest piece would likely be removed before many people could see it. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your work deserves to be understood, not exploited. I want to help tell your story, on your terms. Eliza Chen, Metro Voice." William stared at the message, torn between fear and a strange sense of possibility. For the first time, someone was offering him a chance to reclaim his voice without forcing him to speak aloud. But could he trust her? And was he ready to emerge from behind his hoodie, even partially? As he debated his response across Brooklyn, photos of his protest mural were already spreading across social media, igniting a conversation about artistic ownership and corporate ethics that would soon force both William and Urban Stride into the spotlight. Chapter 3. 3 days after their encounter, William finally responded to Eliza's text with a simple message. "How did you find me?" He sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe in Red Hook, his hoodie still up despite the warm interior. Through the window, he watched a steady rain transform the street into a canvas of rippling reflections. Eliza arrived precisely on time, shaking water from her umbrella. She spotted him immediately, the only person in the cafe with their hood up on a rainy afternoon. As she approached, William fought the urge to flee. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. She placed her phone on the table, turned off. No recordings, no photos, just conversation, or whatever form of communication works for you. William nodded, grateful for her understanding. He pulled out a small notebook and wrote, "My speech is difficult. This is easier." "I respect that," Eliza replied. "To answer your question, I've been tracking Echo's work for months. The art supply store was my lucky break, but I want you to know I haven't published anything about your identity." William wrote, "Why help me with Urban Stride?" "Because what they're doing is wrong," she said without hesitation. "Art isn't just decoration. Your work has meaning, personal meaning. I could see that even before I knew who you were." Over the next hour, they developed a system. Eliza would ask questions, and William would respond through a combination of written notes and occasional spoken words when he felt comfortable. She learned about his childhood trauma, his father's imprisonment for embezzling from a company not unlike Urban Stride, and how the public humiliation had triggered his severe stutter. She understood how street art had become his voice, his therapy, his way of existing in a world that moved too fast for halting speech. "The symposium submission," Eliza mentioned. "That was yours, wasn't it?" William looked surprised. "I'm good at my job," she smiled. "The committee published the shortlist, an anonymous piece about art as identity. It reads like your work speaks." He nodded, a mixture of pride and anxiety crossing his face. "It's brilliant," she continued. "And it could be the foundation for something bigger. William, what if we collaborated? Your art and words, my platform. We could challenge Urban Stride directly, make them accountable." William hesitated, then wrote, "Exposure terrifies me." "I understand," Eliza said. "But consider this. Right now, they're stealing your voice. Working together, we take it back on your terms. You don't have to show your face or speak publicly." And as they discussed possibilities, William's phone buzzed with multiple notifications. Marcus had sent several urgent messages. Urban Stride was taking legal action against the vandal responsible for defamatory imagery, and city workers were already removing the protest mural. William's hands trembled as he showed Eliza the messages. This was his nightmare, being forced into a corner, having to defend himself verbally, becoming a spectacle. "This changes things," Eliza acknowledged. "But it also gives us leverage. Corporate bullying of artists makes for compelling headlines." They spent the next 2 hours developing a strategy. By the time they left the cafe, the plan was set. Eliza would publish a feature exposing Urban Stride's appropriation of Echo's work, including statements from art law experts about the ethical implications. William would create a new series of works documenting the company's attempt to silence him, while preparing a more formal response through his symposium presentation. Over the following week, William threw himself into his art with renewed purpose. Each night he created pieces across the city, not vandalizing private property, but transforming forgotten spaces into visual narratives about corporate power, artistic voice, and personal identity. Each piece incorporated elements from his stolen mural, reclaiming them in new contexts. Eliza's article, titled "When Corporations Steal More Than Art," was published online and immediately went viral. She had been careful to protect William's identity while making Echo's story compelling enough that other media outlets picked it up. Art communities across social media rallied around the anonymous artist, with the hashtag #GiveEchoAVoice trending nationally. Urban Stride found themselves in a public relations nightmare. Their attempt to silence the protest art had backfired spectacularly, with celebrities and influencers now questioning the ethics of their campaign. The company issued a carefully worded statement about appreciating urban aesthetics while reviewing their creative sourcing policies. William watched it all unfold from the relative safety of his apartment, torn between exhilaration and terror. The support was overwhelming, but so was the attention. Marcus had become his unofficial spokesperson, fielding inquiries from galleries and reporters without revealing his friend's identity. "The symposium called again," Marcus said one evening. "They want to feature your piece as the keynote. It's next weekend." William paced anxiously. The symposium represented an opportunity to address the issue on his own terms, to have his written words read to an audience that now cared about his message. But the thought of being in that room, even anonymously, made his chest tight with anxiety. That night, unable to sleep, William texted Eliza, "Would you present my piece at the symposium? I'll be there but can't speak." Her response came immediately, "I'd be honored." "But William, have you considered speaking through your art, a live demonstration alongside your words?" The suggestion resonated with him in unexpected ways. Though he couldn't imagine standing at a podium, the idea of communicating through his medium, letting the audience witness his process while someone else read his words, it felt right. It felt like authentic self-expression on his own terms. The day before the symposium, Urban Stride made a surprising announcement. In response to community feedback, they were cancelling their street art collection and seeking to commission original work from local artists for future campaigns, with proper credit and compensation. They specifically mentioned reaching out to Echo, offering a formal apology and collaboration opportunity. The email came directly to the anonymous account William had established for Echo. "We recognize our mistake and want to make amends. Your work speaks to an authenticity our brand aspires to. Would you consider a legitimate partnership?" William forwarded the email to Eliza, adding, "Is this victory or co-option?" "That's entirely up to you," she replied. "But either way, it proves your voice matters. They're listening now." As William prepared for the symposium, selecting the colors and materials for his demonstration, he realized something had shifted inside him. The hoodie that had been his armor now felt more like a choice than a necessity. His stutter hadn't magically disappeared, but its power to define him had diminished. On the morning of the symposium, William stood before his bathroom mirror, hoodie down, looking at himself directly. My name is W. William," he practiced, meeting his own gaze, "and I have something to say." The stutter was still there, but so was the determination. Tomorrow he would still let Eliza read his words while he painted, but today he had begun to own his voice in all its forms, written, visual, and yes, even spoken. It wasn't about perfect fluency, it was about authentic expression. He pulled the hoodie back up before leaving his apartment, not out of shame now, but simply out of habit and comfort. As he walked through Brooklyn toward the cultural center where the symposium would be held, William took in the city with new eyes. The walls that had once been his only safe space for expression now seemed like just one canvas among many. His story was expanding beyond the concrete, beyond the spray paint, into words and connections and possibilities he hadn't imagined possible just weeks ago. His phone buzzed with a message from Eliza. "Ready for tomorrow?" William typed back without hesitation. "Yes, it's time to own my story." Chapter 4. The Brooklyn Cultural Center hummed with anticipation as attendees filed into the main hall for the symposium's keynote presentation. Art critics mingled with street artists, academics with activists, all drawn by the controversy that had made Echo a household name in art circles across the country. In the front row, representatives from Urban Stride sat uncomfortably, their corporate attire at odds with the eclectic crowd. Backstage, William adjusted the black mask that would conceal the lower half of his face during his demonstration, a compromise between complete anonymity and total exposure. The hoodie remained, more as a symbol now than a hiding place. Beside him, Eliza reviewed her notes one last time. "Nervous?" she asked. William nodded, then unexpectedly spoke. But ready." Eliza smiled, understanding the significance of those two simple words. Over the past weeks, as they had prepared for this moment, she had watched William gradually reclaim his voice, first through their written exchanges, then through occasional spoken sentences when they were alone. His stutter remained, but his shame about it had begun to dissolve. "Remember," she said, "you're in control. If at any point you want to stop—" "I won't," William interrupted, his determination evident despite his halting speech. "This is my story to tell." The curator of the symposium approached them, clipboard in hand. "We're ready when you are. Full house out there, and the live stream has over 5,000 viewers already." William took a deep breath. The knowledge that thousands would witness this moment might have paralyzed him a month ago. Now it fueled his resolve. He had prepared meticulously for this performance, part art demonstration, part personal revelation, all on his own terms. The lights dimmed as Eliza walked onto the stage, her presence confident but purposefully subdued. She stood before the microphone while behind her a large blank canvas was illuminated by soft spotlights. "Good evening," she began. "My name is Eliza Chen, and I'm here to introduce you to an artist whose work you've seen throughout our city, on abandoned walls, under bridges, in forgotten spaces that his vision has transformed. You know him as Echo, but today he has chosen to share more of himself than just his tag." A murmur ran through the audience as William walked onto the stage, his hooded figure instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with street art culture. He positioned himself before the canvas, his back to the audience, spray cans arranged precisely on a small table beside him. "What you're about to witness," Eliza continued, "is a dual expression, words and images created simultaneously. The essay I'll read was written by Echo himself, while the art will emerge before your eyes. Together, they tell a story about voice, identity, and the thin line between appreciation and appropriation." As Eliza began reading William's essay, he started to paint. His movements were fluid and deliberate, years of practice evident in every gesture. The essay began with his childhood, the trauma of his father's crime and imprisonment, the cruel teasing that had triggered his stutter, the progressive retreat into silence as words failed him. Language became a minefield, Eliza read, as William's canvas began to take shape with bold strokes of black and blue. Each attempted sentence was a step into territory where explosion was likely. Art became my alternative alphabet, colors and forms arranged into expressions that couldn't be interrupted or mocked. The audience sat transfixed as image and narrative evolved together. William painted a stylized figure hunched beneath a hood, surrounded by speech bubbles filled not with words, but with intricate patterns, his visual metaphor for the thoughts that remained trapped inside him. As Eliza continued reading, the essay shifted from personal history to artistic philosophy, examining how street art gives voice to those marginalized by conventional platforms. William's canvas evolved accordingly, the central hooded figure now standing straighter, the patterns escaping the confines of the speech bubbles to spread across the entire surface. When corporations appropriate street art, Eliza read, her voice strengthening, they aren't just taking images. They're silencing stories. They strip context from content, meaning from message. They transform expression into decoration, voice into visual wallpaper. At this point, William incorporated recognizable elements from his stolen mural, but transformed them, reclaiming them through recontextualization. The urban stride representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats as the audience began to understand the visual criticism unfolding before them. But this isn't just about corporate theft, Eliza continued, reading William's words. It's about the fundamental human right to tell our own stories, in our own voices, whatever form those voices may take. The final section of the essay was the most personal, addressing William's journey toward reclaiming his voice in all its forms. As Eliza read these words, William's painting entered its final phase. The hooded figure on the canvas now stood fully upright, face partially visible beneath the hood. From the figure's mouth emerged both words and images, intertwined and equally powerful. My stutter is not a flaw to be fixed, Eliza read, but part of the unique rhythm of my expression. My art is not separate from my speech. They are different dialects of the same language, my language. As she finished reading the essay, William completed his painting with a flourish of vibrant red, signing it not with his tag Echo, but with William in bold letters. The audience erupted in applause, many rising to their feet in standing ovation. William turned to face them, still masked, but hoodie now pushed back slightly to reveal more of his face than he had ever shown publicly. He and Eliza stood side by side, accepting the applause not as separate entities but as collaborators. What happened next wasn't planned. The moderator approached with a microphone, asking if Echo, William, would take a few questions from the audience. Eliza prepared to intervene, to protect William from what she assumed would be too much exposure. But William gently took the microphone himself. The room fell silent, tension and anticipation hanging in the air. I will answer the 3 questions, he said, his stutter evident, but his voice clear and determined. But first, I want to say something. He paused, gathering himself. The audience waited with respectful silence. My name is William, he continued, each word deliberate. I used to hide behind hoodies because I was ashamed of my stutter. I let others define me by what they saw as broken, but there is nothing broken about different ways of speaking. He gestured toward his painting. This is my voice. So is this, he added, pointing to himself speaking. Both are valid. Both are mine. The questions that followed were thoughtful, focused on his artistic process and philosophy rather than his personal struggles. William answered each with brief but meaningful responses, his stutter present but no longer the center of his identity. After the 3rd question, he handed the microphone back to the moderator and stepped away from the spotlight, rejoining Eliza at the side of the stage. The symposium continued with a panel discussion about ethical practices in art and advertising, but William and Eliza slipped out a side door. In the quiet of the hallway, William lowered his mask, his expression a complex mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. You did it, Eliza said simply. We did, William corrected, his voice steadier now that the pressure of public speaking had passed. They exited the building into the cool evening air, where Marcus waited with barely contained excitement. "Dude, you spoke on stage in front of everyone." He grabbed William in a bear hug. "And you're trending on every platform. Your William owns his story is blowing up." William smiled, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. "What happens now?" "Whatever you want," Eliza replied. "Urban Stride's representatives are asking to meet. 3 galleries have inquired about exhibitions. The Cultural Center wants to develop an educational program around your story and art. Or," Marcus added, "you could disappear again. Go back to anonymous midnight murals. It's your choice, man." William considered these options as they walked through Brooklyn streets illuminated by the soft glow of evening. They passed walls bearing his earlier works, the secret expressions of a person who hadn't believed his actual voice deserved to be heard. "I don't want to choose," he said finally. "Echo can still exist for night work, but William needs to speak too, even with a stutter." "So both," Eliza nodded. "The hoodie comes up when needed, down when chosen." "Exactly," William smiled. "Different V voices for different S stories." As they approached his newest mural, the one protesting Urban Stride's appropriation, William noticed something unexpected. The city hadn't removed it as threatened. Instead, someone had added a protective clear coating over the piece, with a small plaque identifying it as the work of Echo William and dating it as a significant moment in contemporary urban art discourse. William stared at this validation, this acknowledgement of his work's legitimacy. It represented everything he had fought for, not just legal recognition, but cultural respect for street art as meaningful expression. "I should talk to Urban Stride," he decided. Not to accept their offer, but to educate them, to help create guidelines for ethical collaboration with street artists. "Changing the system from within," Eliza nodded approvingly, while continuing to challenge it from without. "Both and, not either or," William agreed, finding the phrase easier to say than many others. 1 month later, William stood in a community art space in Bushwick, surrounded by young people with various speech difficulties. The hoodie was down, though still worn, now a choice rather than a necessity, a symbol of his journey rather than his hiding place. On the walls around them hung their collaborative project, a massive mural exploring different forms of communication, from spoken word to sign language to visual art. "Remember," William told the group as they added final touches to the piece, "stuttering doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It just means you have your own rhythm. Find all your V voices, written, visual, spoken, and use them all." A teenager with a stutter more severe than William's looked up at him with grateful recognition. How did you stop being scared?" he asked. William considered this. Spray can suspended mid-air. "I didn't," he admitted honestly. "I'm still scared sometimes, but I realized something important. Fear of speaking and having something worth saying can exist in the same person. The second is stronger than the first." As the workshop ended, Eliza arrived to document the project for a feature piece in the Metro Voice, now expanded into a regular column about overlooked voices in the city's cultural landscape. Her collaboration with William had evolved into a genuine friendship, their different communication strengths complementing each other. "Urban Stride's new campaign launches tomorrow," she reminded him as they walked through the neighborhood afterward. "Are you ready to see your commissioned piece on billboards?" William nodded. The irony wasn't lost on him. The company that had stolen his art was now paying handsomely for it and crediting him properly. More importantly, they had established an artist advocacy board with William as a key advisor, creating pathways for ethical collaboration between corporate entities and street artists. "It's not about the money," he said. "It's about the message, about showing kids like that b-boy today that their voices matter, however they express them." As dusk fell, they passed a wall where William had painted one of his earliest pieces years ago. a simple, hoodie-clad figure with no visible face. Beside it, he had recently added a new image, the same figure with hoodie pulled back, face visible, eyes meeting the viewer directly. Between the two figures, a simple phrase was painted in William's distinctive lettering, "Own your story." William paused before this visual representation of his journey. The stutter that had once defined him was now just one aspect of a more complex identity: artist, advocate, mentor, friend. He still wore hoodies, still painted at night sometimes, still struggled with certain words, but he no longer hid. "Ready for tomorrow's interview?" Eliza asked, referring to the local TV spot about the new youth art program William had helped establish. "Nervous," William admitted with a smile, "but ready." As they continued walking, William pulled his hoodie up against the evening chill, a practical choice now, not a hiding place. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky, each one visible despite the city's glow. Like words finding their way through a stutter, he thought. Delayed perhaps, but no less bright when they finally appear.